So you know, I think embroidery is beautiful. Machine embroidery, hand embroidery, I really love it all. But you know, machine embroidery, we can add a little something to it. Because I think machine embroidery, well, it's just the start. So let's take this beautiful design and let's add some bling to it with some hand stitches, some beads. You know, we're going to bling it up. I'm Cathy, this is Sewing Tech Talk, and join me for some really fun add-ons. So it really is no secret. I love embroidery. I love machine embroidery. I love hand embroidery. I think I started on my love for embroidery when I was a little girl, and my aunt, well, she had this purse. It was a straw purse, and it had big chunky embroidery on it and beads, and I just, whenever I played dress up, that was the purse I wanted to play with. So I think that's what started me. Now, machine embroidery, well, if you watch Sewing Tech Talk, you know I like machine embroidery. But what you haven't seen is I also like hand embroidery. And I do that, well, it's kind of a nice fun activity when I'm sitting watching TV or a movie or something. So, can we combine both? I think there are advantages if we don't. So let's let machine embroidery be the start for this video, because what I want to do is I want to take the machine embroidery and add some handwork to it. Now there's some machine embroideries that are designed to look like handwork, and this is one of my favorites, and I think it's one of my favorites that I keep using over and over again because it does look like handwork, and I've used this on so many things. But I think I can add some extra dimension by putting some big chunky embroidery stitches on the top of it. So what I did is I added some French knots, some bullion knots up here, and down here I'm adding French knots. You see there's no stitching there, and I'm putting some French knot in. I'll show you those in a little bit. But what happens is when you're doing some hand embroidery, you're going to be going through the fabric. And when we do a machine embroidery, well, quite frankly, what we do is we put a whole bunch of stitches on a whole bunch of fabric with some stabilizer on the back to make everything lie nice and flat. That makes it kind of hard to get a needle through. So if we can eliminate some of those stitches, or take some of those stitches and make them a little bit less dense, it's going to be a little bit easier. I also have a technique where what I do is I stitch just using the threads on the top, and I'll show you that in just a minute. But let's go to the machine, and I want to show you another cool trick and how we're going to lighten up that stitch count and eliminate some of those colors. So here's my little bird, and this design is built into the Stellaire 2, and it comes with the upgrade from Stellaire 1 to Stellaire 2. He's a really sweet little bird, and he's a plump little bird. So when I hit set, you're going to see him. Here he is, and he just needed to be more dimensional. So this is a trick that I'm going to add to the embroidery that's still on the machine. What I did is I made him what's called Trapunto. And what that is I stuffed a little bit on the outside edge of him. Now, let's let the machine do that stitching for us. So here he is. We're going to use IQ Designer to create an outline around the bird. So how do I do that? So when I go to edit, I'm in the embroidery edit screen, and I touch this little flower right down here. And what that does is that takes the outline of my bird. Well, I really just need the outline of my bird, and I'm getting the outline of the whole design. No problem, because in my design center, well, we have a lot of controls. So if I hit memory, it's going to send it to the memory of the machine, and I could recall it in my design center. I've already done that, so let's hit cancel, and let's add outline stitching to the bird exactly where I need it so I can stuff him. So I'm going to hit add, my design center, and let's recall that outline of the bird, well, the outline of the entire design. It's under that flower. There it is. Okay. Now, here it is. Now, basically, I really just want the outline of the bird, and it's all one continuous line. No problem. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my eraser and erase just the connection down here and here. This is a good, let's use a big chunky eraser. Now, when I come on in and I touch the design, I can come on and I can just break that connection between the two. Now Now there it is. I actually have an opening. Now I want this outline of this bird to stitch. If my opening is way too big, what I can do is I can just draw a line in to actually make that just a smaller opening. Quite frankly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch just the outline of my bird last with some super fine thread. I have this thread. It's the Quilter Select, and it's an 80 weight cotton poly. And it's really super, super fine. It works great for quilting too. But it's such a fine thread, you're not going to see it when I stitch over the top of my little bird. So let's just add a little bit more of a line. It's pretty simple. I want to make sure that I'm stitching with just the double run. That's the smallest stitching that I can have. Let's put it in red. Okay. And now we're just going to draw a line down in here. So where's my stylus? I know I have it. Here it is. So I'm just going to draw a line, and I'm just going to come in and let's make it a little bit closer so I can see it. Move it down. And I'm just going to draw a line that's coming from here to here. It doesn't have to be super beautiful. Whew, there we go. If I made it too big, I can erase that part. But now I want the other parts of my bird to be that line. Oop, I didn't connect them here. You can see you have to be super precise. Not. If you do have too many stitches there, just bring in your eraser and just kind of erase your childlike stitching. Now, let's take a bucket and let's do that outline of that bird, and let's take it back down to regular size, and you can see I have my bird outline. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to the last color, and I'm going to stitch around him. Before I stitch this color, I'm going to put a piece of fabric on the back. Let me show you what that looks like. So here's a fabric on the back, and you can see I stitched that outline here, and here's that gap that I left. And I'm just going to stuff. When I get finished, I'm going to come in and use that super fine thread again and just stitch that opening closed from the front side. So when I hit next, there's my outline. Preview. Okay. And let's send it off to the land of embroidery. There it is. Now maybe I don't want, even though it's fine thread, maybe I want it a little bit smaller. The red box is around the outline I just created. Let's make it a little bit smaller. So it's inside of the bird. And let's magnify to see what we did. Oh, I think I need to move it a little bit when I made it smaller. So hit move and we'll move it in place. I could have actually taken off the part with his beak. I got super detailed if I wanted to. I think it's going to be okay. Okay, and let's take it back to regular size. Now I mentioned when I did my stitching, my little hand stitching on my little bird, what I did is I added, oop, here he is, I added some beads right around in here, and I added some extra stitching right along the edge. And I don't want this area where I even added my beads or added my stitching, I didn't want them to be super, super dense. I wanted to remove those colors because I would cover them over anyway. So what are the couple techniques we can use in the machine to make sure it makes it easier for hand embroidery? So we're still in the size key. I'm going to put an outline around the bird by touching the select, and now I have an outline around just the bird, and that's what I'm going to be playing with. When I go up to size, I want to make sure I'm going to lower the density of this. When I touch this little icon right here, what's going to happen is I can recalculate stitches, enlarge it or shrink it, but I can also change the density. And it always has this message where it's going to go to its original size and place in the embroidery screen. Now make sure that if you're ever going to reduce the density, do it before you move it, because you're just going to have to move it again anyway. So there it is. Now I don't want to do the size, so I'm going to leave size and I'm going to go to the density. And here is the density. Now this is a big design with a lot of stitches, so it's going to take the machine a couple seconds to recalculate. But let's go minus, 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 minus and see what we get. It's recalculating those stitches within the machine. I think that's pretty cool. And it's taking 10% of those stitches away and making sure that I have less thread there. Now, something to be aware of. When you're doing this to a design and you're taking away some stitches, the coverage, well, if it covers like this, you're taking away some of those threads. So you might see the background just a little bit more. So be aware of that. So it recalculated and it took my bird down 10% of the stitches away. I could go all the way down to 80%. I don't think I need to do that. But just remember, this is one way that you can take the density down of a design within the machine, which is pretty amazing. Okay. Now, if you look at the design, right here in the little flowers, there's a couple colors of thread that I'm just going to cover anyway. And I don't need that extra density of the stitching so I can get my needle through there when I'm putting my beads on. So I have a feature in the Stellaire 2 called No Sew. When I touch this, I can eliminate some of the colors. Now, yes, I could just not stitch them, but it's kind of important to know what the color is going to do. For example, if this yellow here in the middle of the flowers is also the yellow that's stitching on the bird, well, I don't want to eliminate that, do I? But maybe it's a different color. Let's check it out. So, I don't see any yellow yet. Let's go down to the yellow. Look at all the color changes. Now, here's a yellow. And you can see in the little box, ooh, that is just that part of the bird. And if I eliminate that, well, I don't want to. So let's find that other yellow. It's the very next color. And look, that's the parts I don't want to stitch. No sew. So I know I can eliminate those, not have to remember to not stitch them. The machine's going to remember that for me. There's also some other little stitching in there. Let's see. Yes, there's some other little designs in there. I don't want those either. No sew. So the machine's really going to help me set up my bird for hand embroidery success. So I no longer have those there, and I can go through all the different parts of the design. If they don't work for me, then I can eliminate those and make it easier to do my hand stitching. Pretty cool, right? So this bird, ready to go, and of course I already did him. Here he is. Now I have to stitch down this part with that super fine thread to make sure that my plump little bird is super extra plump. And I have all my different little embroideries, extra embroideries and beadwork that I did. Now I have some handwork up here and I wanted to show you that. A couple little hand stitches. Now in your handout, I have some basic hand embroidery stitches if you've never done those before. But I just want to show you two right now that could really add some dimensionality to your machine embroidery. So here's this is that same design I love. It's the handwork. And this design in here, well, what I did, using that same technique I just showed you, I eliminated the stitching in the center. So you can see that there's no stitching there. And what I did is I put some French knots inside there using a thicker thread, pearl crown rayon. Let me grab it and show you. You can get it on a spool, and it's really a very chunky thread. And it really adds that extra dimension to make this look like it's all hand done. So let me show you what it looks like to do a French knot. It's pretty simple. I'm going to put it down here so we can see. Let's bring our thread up to the back. Now there's no extra stitching there so that you can see. Now normally you're going to need to use a hoop when you do hand embroidery, but this has the stabilizer and everything still in it, and I find that I can get away without a hoop, so it's pretty cool. So here we go. So here is my thread, my chunky pearl crown rayon, and there is my embroidery needle. I'm actually using a chenille needle, which is a big chunky needle to accommodate this larger thread, and a point. So I'm going to take the thread and I'm going to wrap it around the needle a couple times and stick the needle back pretty close to where I came out and tighten up that thread. Now what I'm going to do is just pull the needle through. holding on to that little loop. And what I've done is I've stitched down a couple loops. And you can see it adds tons of dimensionality. Of course, I could also use beads in there, but this works out great. Now let me show you another. I'm going to do what's called like a buttonhole stitch. And you see how the thread, this is embroidery floss, just pretty basic, pretty reasonable. Get it pretty much anywhere. See how I'm adding some extra dimension on here with that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stitch using I'm going to float the stitches on the top. So I'm just going to grab a stitch here over the threads, easy for me to say, and come some threads down there. Can you see that the needle is through just the threads on the top? And when I pull it through, I'm leaving this thread underneath, just like that. And when I pull it through, I have a chunky stitch on the top that adds some super dimension on the top of my flower. And now I can use this also. Say, you know, embroidery, metallic embroidery threads, they're a little bit challenging, but maybe you want to add some extra sparkle to your design. Use them in your hand sewing needle and add that extra bit of bling on the top of the design. Pretty neat, right? So add some hand stitches to get some extra dimension. You can also come in and you can use like hot fix crystals, add the beads on there, even take some ink and just do some shading on top of the threads that are already there. Speaking of that, I want to show you another project that I've just gotten started on. And I'm going to use a Disney design in the Stellaire. So this bird is going to be this little purse when it grows up. This is embroidery, and I've added some color on the inside and those crystals just like I mentioned, and it's going to be a really fun little bag. This doesn't go with this, but can you see how just the added beads on the top of the embroidery just takes it to that next level? Okay, so now let's do our design that I want to do on this fabric. And this is my metallic Essex. It's a cotton linen blend with little metallic pieces on the inside. And I'm going to put a Disney princess on there well, this is a gift for kind of a grown-up Disney princess. So let's go find those Disney designs. Okay. Now, under Disney, I'm going to go, I think it's here. Yes, it is. So I'm going to do Simply Adorable. I think it's going to be the perfect addition to the front of this purse. Now I'm going to hit set. Now here's the design that I get to play with, but I really need to do some modifications to this, don't I? I think it's going to be a pretty dense design, but there's one thing that you have to know. Disney designs are limited to the amount of editing that you can do. So on this one, I'm just going to have to hope that, well, I'm going to do that dancing on the top when I'm doing my embroidery, and I'm going to add some extra little stuff. I think I'm going to be able to make these flowers a little chunkier, because I think that's really going to add bling to the purse. We'll add beads. Oh, and I know one other thing I want to add. Let me show you. You don't have to be limited. Look at this. I think she needs a little bow. There's a little tiny bow, and I think that's going to be the right scale. Now I have a handout for this in all my videos, and in the handout I show you how to make a little teeny tiny bow, because sometimes it just takes a little girly bow to add that extra little something to your design. So now I need to change the colors. I can do that with a Disney design, but it's kind of hard to tell because this color, this red, is going to be hard to kind of judge what I want. So I can see the top of her. I think she needs to change. Now we have a feature in the machine that's pretty cool. I'm going to come into the settings and go to page 8 in this machine, and embroidery background color, I'm going to hit select, and I'm going to choose one that I think is pretty close. I think that one's pretty close. Yep, that'll do. And when I say OK, and OK again, I can see her on a pretty close background. Now remember, I also have that My Design Snap to send the design to the background, the color on in, and I get a really close color then. But this is pretty fast. And what I need to do is I need to come in and change the colors to make sure I like them. I've already done that, but let me show you the process. I really need to change her to a different color for sure. So let's go down and let's find where she is. I'm going to hit all the little red brick colors to find out where she is. That's not her. I definitely want to change that white because I know that's really going to stand out. Let's see if we can find her. There she is. Now it's on the embroidery, which is your basic color palette. But on the Stellaire, you have a choice of any other. Say I have a complete collection of Floriani threads. Gee, I wish. And I can choose any one of these to choose a color that's going to work for her. I can choose, let's see, I can go peach. I can give her a little bit more of a kind of a different orangey tone. I can keep going through and find the color that I really like. And what I'm going to do also is I'm going to change these other colors to see what I like. I've already kind of went through that process, and I had a vision of making these flowers kind of in the purpley blue kind of range because I thought that would really stand out against my red background. Some of the leaves I turned to a pale green color, but in this design they're also doing some of the flowers. I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't gone through and selected a color and did a change to see if that really works. And I could really kind of get my color palette and see what works for me. So I kind of did that. Let's see what I did. We're going to go back home and pull up my design from the memory of the machine. There she is, set. So these are my color choices. And what I'm going to do when I get all finished, I'm going to come in and add some extra dimensional stitching to all these flowers to really make them stand out. And I might add some different color onto her little hair to give her a little bit more of a, you know, kind of fancy princessier look. So let me do that. And when we come back, I'd love to show you how we've taken her and really blinged our little princess up. Because a princess really needs some bling, don't you think? So let me get to stitching and I'll be right back. So it's finished. Isn't it stunning? These Disney designs, they really stitch out beautiful. The detail, well, it's a Disney design, but I think I can add a little bit more. So here's what I'm going to do. Through the magic of video, I'd like to show you how I embellish this just a little bit more. We're going to put some ink into her hair to make it look like she's a little bit more, you know, there. We're going to add some embroidery around the flowers to really have them three-dimensional and stick out. And last, but certainly not least, let's use some hot fix crystals to really add some sparkle. Because, you know, every princess, she needs some sparkle. Isn't she stunning? So I really think you need to take your embroidery and think of it as just the start. Because you can add embellishments and really make your embroidery, well, quite frankly, take it up to the next level. I want to thank you for watching. Send it off to George. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Cathy. That was an incredible presentation. And so let's go over the special offer we have on the Brother Stellaire series. So we have the XJ2, which is their combination sewing and embroidery, and the XE2, which is dedicated embroidery. They both share the same embroidery features, which is a large 9.5 by 14 inch embroidery area with over 780 built-in embroidery designs, and of them, over 100 of them are Disney. It also has over 30 fonts and large beautiful monograms, and with the fonts you can edit in all kinds of arrangements. You can arc, you can array, you can even cut and paste and kern it in some custom ways. Speaking of customization, you can take a design and do an automatic applique around it. And with the matrix copy, you can copy this very quickly to make patches. And if we had the scan and cut, we can actually send it to the scan and cut out those patches, and then embroider them beautifully. An additional advanced technology is a new 2-point laser positioning. I can take something like a name and position it perfectly on a line. I can use it to do multiple hoopings and match them perfectly. I can even use it for edge-to-edge quilting. Now, part of what the Stellaire series offers is a special relationship with the scan and cut. They actually can marry together, so I can send an applique design right from my machine and it will cut it out perfectly for beautiful applique. But better yet, I can send a design from my scan and cut and turn it into embroidery. It also unlocks a new feature where I can choose one of the colors of my design, whether if it's a built-in design, I can choose that and turn it into applique. But let's take that heart that I sent over. I turn it into embroidery. I select the color, and now it's applique. Now let's bring over the third part of the piece. I want to create my own fabric, and I can do that with Print Moda. I took an image of a rose, and I arranged it just in a beautiful kaleidoscope of color. And I printed that fabric and placed it on in the scan and cut. I took my design I created on the Stellaire from the scan and cut, sent it over to the scan and cut it out, and I have one complete embroidery design created with that trifecta of creativity. Now the XJ2 also is a sewing machine, and it has a large 11.25-inch opening, beautiful lighting. It has 760 built-in stitches, from quilting stitches to applique to utility. It even has automatic stippling and some beautiful decorative stitches that are very, very wide. It also has an automatic 1/4 inch feature which moves the needle over a 1/4 inch from the foot, and you can use the laser guidance it has on there so you can just do some beautiful piecing. It also has amazing fabric control with an automatic fabric sensor, and this gives you the ability to sense multiple layers like in denim, or if I want to sew on some sheer fabric like this tricot, I can do that beautifully, or even working with elastics. It handles the fabric beautifully. If it's even more extreme, we can add the digital dual feed. This is a belt-driven feed system that gives perfect contact on the fabric. And so you see here with this marine vinyl, there's no slippage. I also can use it with such things as minky, which is hard to sew with, and of course, quilting. So let's talk about the special we have on the Stellaire XJ2. This is the combination sewing and embroidery machine. This has a manufacturer suggested list price of $12,999.99, and it's on sale for $9,999.99. We have interest-free payments, plus we're offering free shipping across the country. But wait, we have a special bonus. We're going to include that Print Moda Studio, that fabric printer by Brother. That has a retail value of $1,499, and that's included free for a limited time. Now, let's say we want the ultimate package, the trifecta of creativity. That's when we add the scan and cut. So you add the scan and cut, now we have all three items, and we have that on sale for $10,749.98. We have interest-free payments and free shipping across the country. But wait, this is for a limited time. Now, if I want just the dedicated embroidery, let's say you already have a sewing machine and you want the XE2, which is dedicated embroidery. This has a manufacturer suggested retail price of $9,999.99. We have it on sale for $7,499.99. We're offering interest-free payments as well as free shipping across the country. And of course, we're going to include that bonus, the Print Moda Studio, free with the purchase, and that has a regular retail price of $1,499. But let's make it the ultimate, the trifecta of creativity. You will get the scan and cut added with that, and that total package for all three items is $8,249.98. And we do also have interest-free payments on that as well, and free shipping. But don't wait, this is a limited time offer. Click on the link to order. You can email us at customerservice@moores-sew.com or give us a call at 1-800-865